Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we continue with part 13 on the art of symbolism from Some Mystical Adventures by G.R.S. Mead. Chapter 13, on the art of symbolism. The mind of the Father hath sown symbols through the world. The Chaldean Oracles. Many people talk vaguely about symbols, and some are really interested in symbolism. But even of those who may happen to possess a little learning on the subject, how few are there who, if they turn and really face themselves, and there is no audience to play to, can say they have got to the heart of the matter, or know how rightly to seize the Proteus whose changing forms they are ever grasping at, and so force it to speak true words. I, for my part, freely admit that I am, as yet, far from the real heart of the matter. I cannot yet hold the Proteus steady and force it to speak true words of power, but there is joy in the game of catch as can catch, and I am game for a short bout. Though doubtless as of yore the wily one will change into something I have never thought of before, and I shall have no grip in mind to hold him. Symbol is no native name, it is a Greek importation, symbolon, and its root meaning is said to be a sign or token by which one knows or infers a thing. The utterance of this word should awaken in us the idea of putting together symbalen with the notion in the passive of to correspond and to tally. But to put together is to compare, and so to compare one's own opinion with facts, and hence to conclude, infer, conjecture, interpret. And it is from this last meaning that the wisdom of the word books tells us we get the meaning of symbol as a sign or token by which one knows or infers a thing. I'm afraid that we have not yet grasped our Proteus amid all these changing forms of words. A symbol is a sign, but that again is a Latin importation, signum, and we may pass it by. A symbol is a token, that is good English. Token is connected with to teach, to point out, show, witness. To betoken is to be a symbol of. But words will not help us much. They are forms of speech that are ever slipping away into other forms. A symbol is not a word, it is something more fundamental. In its proper meaning, it is something almost more primitive than an ideogram or type picture. Let us go in search of the idea, the living idea, not some abstract inference, the fullness, not the flat. If there is a flat land as compared with a three-dimensional land, may we not think of symbol language as a three-dimensional language, so to speak, when compared with the flat languages of ordinary speech? Or to use these words in a deeper meaning, speech in its most primitive mode is action, and so symbolic action or drama might be said to be the true symbol language. This symbol or three-dimensional language is closely connected with ceremony, and ceremony, Latin ceremonia, is a word formed on a stem that grows from the root cre, as in creo, I make create, which is of the same origin as the Sanskrit kri, as in karma, action doing. A ceremony is a sacred rite. That is, it is typical, and as such should be of creative potency, for as the Chaldean Oracle has it, the mind of the Father hath sown symbols through the world. That which is typical is ideal, for type and idea are synonyms. Are we now getting any nearer the heart of the matter? Are we beginning to make our symbols alive? Can we afford to dismiss any true symbol with the dull remark, it's only a symbol? The universe itself is a symbol. Man is a symbol. Even in their lowest strata, symbols are the outlines, so to say, of three-dimensional objects from some point of view, seen from one side or another. An outline in its inner meaning is intimately connected with idea. It is, as it were, a ground plan. Now, as symbols in this sense have to do with ideas and types, are connected with the living side of things, it is not possible to interpret a symbol in one set fashion only, and tie it down to one set form. We cannot make an exact science of symbolism. It is initiatory rather than didactic. It starts one towards living ideas. It does not peg us out in some rigid configuration. So that if it is asked, how does one know that this or that is the right interpretation of any particular symbol, it is exceedingly difficult, if not impossible, to prove it in the way of physical demonstration. If the interpretation really fits, there will be a response within. It will be a living response, not the imprisoning of the mind in a dead form. In the interpretation of symbols, we must be prepared to give up exactness in the way it is generally understood, and allow our minds free play. At the beginning, it is best to use any hint that seems to promise well. First apply it in every direction, then as soon as ever it has led to another clue, throw it away. In learning the great language of symbols, it is necessary to keep the mind ever free, plastic, and adaptable. If we persist in keeping stuck in the old ruts, we shall never learn the meaning of symbols. The beauty of great symbols is the infinite variety of their modes of interpretation. To think there is only one definite interpretation for each symbol is to paralyze one's symbol mind and make it fall dead and flat into the superficial. One should play with symbols as a mathematician plays with numbers. Symbols are the playthings of the gods. And I think the secret of interpreting symbols is to get the symbol first into one's mind and not one's mind into the symbol. The mind should not be allowed to relate itself to the symbol, should not allow itself to be attracted by the picture into going out of itself and crystallizing itself into one form, but the symbol should rather be compelled to relate itself to the mind. It should be taken into the mind, and then the mind will be able to see it from every side and grasp it as a whole. Symbol language has its letters and its words, and the above may be suggested as a method of learning the alphabet. But symbol language is not the same thing quite as symbolical language, nor is it to be confused with metaphorical language. Metaphor is transferring the meaning of one word to another in ordinary speech. It is exceedingly important, quite a mystic art, a sort of game of general post among the ideas connected with words. A metaphor gives a meaning that is not to be understood literally or according to the face value of the letters as we know them, but a reading of root ideas, as it were, abstracting or subtracting the substance from them. That is to say, we take away the substance that built the idea and keep the idea and then expand it and spread it out cosmically in every direction. Metaphors may be said to be more connected with substance, symbols with spirit. Symbols should be eaten and digested, so to say. Triangles and swastikas, for instance, might be said to be symbols which, when gazed upon in an ecstatic state of mind, that is, taken within and contemplated down, nourish the body of essence. If made alive, they create pleasing sensations in it, stimulate, feed, and excite it, rearrange all its activities, alter the currents in it, and build it. All great symbols are said to do this. That is, all cosmic symbols or forms that are directly related to things that are. These cosmic symbols suggest modes of creative energies. When creative powers act, they draw certain patterns and plans and not others. And these patterns, types and ideas are cosmic symbols, and it is by ecstatically gazing at them that they nourish our root substance and so inform it cosmically, or in a harmonious or orderly fashion. Symbols are toys in the great game. We should thus learn to play with symbols in the true kindergarten, the everlasting reveling place, the essential substance that is our nursery and our cradle, and our womb for birth into greater things. But this game is a living thing. We should make symbols act. We learn little while we keep them steady. A true symbol should be ever in motion. Nor should we be satisfied till we can glide from one symbol to another. While we think of symbols as dead detached objects cut off from one another and bearing no relation to each other, we shall know nothing. We should play with them, draw them, or picture them from every standpoint till we catch fresh glimpses every moment. Let us think of one great world body ever in motion. All true symbols may be said to be attempts to snapshot this object in motion. They are like separate films for a cinematograph. The great difficulty is to get them in their right sequence and make them pass in procession before the inner eye. If we could manage to do this and obtain the right sequence for a moment, then we should get in touch with some real living ideas. But the right grouping of the symbols is essential. However, the more we practice, the better we guess, the faster will the real ideas come. It is perhaps the greatest of arts, the true practice of the art of symbolism. We can do it with our minds, with our eyes, with our bodies. Indeed, if we could act this continuity between symbols, we should, it is said, breathe in ideas with every movement of the essential body. But this is far more difficult than practicing with our minds. Of course, all this applies only to true symbols. Many things called symbols are distorted or false appearances. No signs, no symbols are worth anything unless they signify facts. That is to say, unless they represent transformations which will be experienced when inner vision develops. A true symbol is something capable of containing life. It is never of any arbitrary shape. It must be, or it will never convey living ideas. Symbols, I believe, are not given to make us think in the ordinary sense. Their main use is to convey life to our life and bring about a union. Their real use is to convey life of such power that it is capable of actually making an impression or depression upon the substance with which the higher mind is connected. They are the link between thought and action. Symbolism is connected with sigils, signatures, characters, types, in their root meanings, with all the nomenclature connected with the impression of ideas on substance. Before a man is capable of causing his subtle substance to go through all these transformations, the earliest redactor of the Nicene document writes, and the Chaldeans say that soul is very difficult to discover and hard to understand, for it never remains of the same appearance or form or in the same state, so that one can describe it by a general type or comprehend it by an essential quality. On this, the Church Father Hippolytus comments, referring to the Nasins, or disciples of the Serpent of Wisdom, these variegated metamorphoses they have laid down in the Gospel superscribed according to the Egyptians. See Thrice Greatest Hermes 1:150. Or metamorphoses, at which we have hinted before. These initiations, beginnings or startings, can really take place in the root matter of his vehicles. It is possible for the transformations actually to take place in symbol in his higher mind of ideation, and this is a very desirable thing. To accomplish it in body is doubtless possible for a few only, but to accomplish it in mind is possible for many more. It is not dangerous, and it is a great developer of mental capacity. It is a method of contemplation. The symbol learner should strive to get the mind quite still, to get the idea of the mind being, as it were, a sea of subtle substance. He must not think discursively, must not space out separate symbols and look at them one after the other, but try to feel the mind substance being molded. If, for instance, he think of potter and clay, he should try to imagine the substance of the mind being molded from one to the other continuously, backwards and forwards, and watch them grow within himself. When practicing symbols, we should never objectivize or project. We should rather feel them grow within, and then an occasional idea may flash through. It is, however, not desirable to pay too much attention to these ideas, for noticing them immediately transfers the consciousness to another plane of mind. For though this practice is a mental one, it is not in itself a science. It is better to notice the ideas that flash forth just sufficiently to record them on the memory plate, so that they can be used later when the tranquility of mind that is the essential condition of the practice has been left. The world body, or great surround, or essence envelope of every man may be thought of as, so to speak, the LCM, or rather GCM, of all symbols. It is a useful practice to play with spheres and circles and conic sections, and so try to get ideas along these lines. It is quite credible that it is possible to resolve every symbol into an attitude, so to say, or action, or rather activity, of this world body, and so connect and link up all symbols by means of this world soul, which is soul and body also. This world body may be said to be our way out of manhood into the cosmos, and so also is the art of symbolism the way out of men's language into the language of the gods. Root symbols may be regarded as fundamental lines and curves which carry with them certain powers and certain meanings, and these lines and curves are to be found in every science and art of men. They are, from this standpoint, the roots from which all sciences and arts grow, the foundations on which they are built, the gates forth to greater worlds. It is not, however, to be supposed that such symbolism is the end of the matter, by no means. It is introductory to the linking of mind onto this world body. Symbols are, so to say, snapshots of the self-motivity of this world body. They teach concerning its breathing, concerning the pulsing of its heart. And even as we can get from art to science or gnosis by means of symbols, so can we get from mind to mind and from person to person. Not personality, but the higher person or mind. But this world body does not mean a mass of some vast size. This world body has no definite size. It breathes and is a different size for every mode of breath. It is a node, rather. It is an atom ordered according to the greater cosmos. And in the greater cosmos, the mystics say all things are the same size, or all things are any size, or again, there is no such thing as size. It does not count in the greater consciousness any more than we think of the size of our breath. Though from another point of view, mystically considered, the objective worlds of size are in the breath of the gods. They breathe and the worlds act, but the gods do not consider their size. It might thus be said that every man's world body is the same size. They are all exactly alike. Each is an atom, each is a scale. It is our great person or higher self that decides what key the scale is in. This means that our divine word relates our group of letters or sounds or planets onto something further and gives them a peculiar meaning of their own. Yet every world body consists of the same letters, the same groups of sounds. Otherwise, the holy confraternity would be an impossibility. All this is intimately connected with the mystery of spirit or divine breath, so that when a man's mind is capable of being fired with spirit, it can immediately mold and form his substance into symbols. It is this power of continually forming man's substance into symbols which brings with it the power of understanding. For symbols may be said to be the link between substance and spirit. It should be noted in this connection that this language of symbols does not teach us about reincarnation. It is not on that side of things, and this interpretation cannot be forced upon it. Reincarnation is connected with the mind of man and can be talked about in words. Symbols depict the activities of life in the man's world body and are not concerned with death or form in activity and the experiences of little persons. Symbols have rather to do with that which is aeonian or age-long. A true symbol must be of worldwide experience and age-long experience. It must not be local or temporary. Thus, the only way to control the Proteus of symbolism is by becoming him, and so keeping pace with every change, transformation, or metamorphosis. And if one is not as yet strong enough to grip the heart of the matter, at any rate, it is something to know the futility of trying to get a true hold by grasping at this or that fleeting appearance. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.